In the deep, uncharted chambers of the human psyche lies a dimension often veiled by shadows, the shadow self. It is not merely a repository of the denied or the feared, but rather a sacred threshold to a profound metamorphosis, a cosmic dance between the concealed and the revealed. To truly understand the shadow is to embark on a pilgrimage inward, beyond the flickering candlelight of conscious thought, into the vast catacombs where light and darkness intertwine, and from which the true alchemy of transformation emerges. It is here, in the shadow's embrace, that life unfolds anew, beyond the borders of ordinary perception, beyond the constraints of identity shaped by masks and societal scripts. Imagine, if you will, a vast and ancient mirror forged in the fires of existence itself, its surface mottled and fractured, reflecting not only the radiant visage but also the obscured fragments of the soul. This mirror, which we carry within, captures every hidden corner, the unspoken fears, the abandoned dreams, and the suppressed desires. The shadow self is this mirrored reflection, cast not in light but in the twilight realm where the known dissolves and the unacknowledged stirs. To gaze into it is to face the paradox of what we both reject and secretly revere within ourselves. It is a cosmic invitation to confront the raw, untamed aspects of being that have been buried beneath layers of conditioning, judgment, and self-denial. This journey into the shadow is not an act of sinking into darkness, but rather a sacred descent akin to a star traversing the night sky, converging with the abyss only to be reborn in a blaze of luminous clarity. It is the pilgrimage of the soul through its own underworld, where the seeds of true freedom germinate. Here, in the fertile soil of hidden fears and forgotten wounds, lies the power to dismantle the illusions that bind us to repetitive cycles of suffering and limitation. The shadow self is both the labyrinth and the key, the riddle and the answer, inviting us to unlock the door to an inner sanctum where transformation is not just possible but inevitable. To comprehend the shadow self is to awaken to the intricate architecture of consciousness itself. It reveals the holographic nature of identity, a multidimensional interplay where light and shadow coalesce to form the whole. This understanding dissolves the false duality that pits light against dark, good against bad, affirming instead that each fragment, each nuance, is an essential thread in the tapestry of the self. The shadow becomes a portal to wholeness, a sacred map guiding the seeker beyond the superficial narratives of ego into a profound communion with the deeper currents of existence. It is here that the mundane transmutes into the mystical, where the alchemy of self-awareness reshapes reality from the inside out. Within the cosmic theater of awakening, the shadow self plays the role of both antagonist and sage. It challenges the hero's journey by confronting us with the parts we wish to hide, yet it also offers the deepest wisdom through the raw honesty of its reflection. This paradox is not a mere psychological curiosity, but a universal principle, echoing the eternal cycles of death and rebirth that underpin all creation. Just as the night sky is embroidered with stars because of the darkness that frames them, so too does our inner light shine most brilliantly when we have embraced the depths of shadow. The shadow self holds the keys to unlocking the mysteries of personal destiny, serving as a bridge between the finite self and the infinite potential that lies dormant, waiting to be awakened. To awaken to the shadow self is to engage with the fabric of reality itself, for it is woven from the same invisible threads that connect all beings across time and space. It is a cosmic paradox that the very facets of ourselves we fear to know are the same that can liberate us in ways beyond imagination. This is the essence of transformation beyond belief, a profound alchemical shift where the boundaries of self dissolve and a new reality begins to crystallize. The shadow is no longer an enemy to be vanquished but a sacred partner in the dance of becoming, a wellspring of creativity, insight, and profound healing. In practical terms, this awakening reverberates through every aspect of life, Relationships deepen with newfound authenticity, old patterns of limitation release their grip, and the mundane world is infused with a sense of sacred possibility. Yet beneath this surface lies a cosmic truth. Understanding the shadow self is an act of harmonizing with the hidden laws that govern existence itself. It is an initiation into a secret geometry of being, where each revelation is a step closer to the ultimate mystery, the unfathomable source from which all life flows. This understanding is not reserved for mystics or sages, but accessible to anyone willing to traverse the inner landscape with courage and curiosity. As we begin this exploration, it is vital to hold a space of gentle reverence and radical honesty, recognizing that the shadow self is not a demon to be exorcised, but a lost child needing compassion and integration. It is an invitation to reimagine ourselves beyond the fragmented identities and to awaken to a new form of sovereignty, one rooted in acceptance, self-love, and deep inner knowing. The transformation that follows is not merely psychological. It resonates on a spiritual frequency that realigns us with the cosmic pulse, the silent rhythm that animates the universe from the microcosm of our being to the vast horizons of all that is. The journey to understand the shadow self is thus a sacred odyssey, an unraveling of the deepest mysteries woven into the fabric of life itself. It calls us to descend into the depths where light and darkness merge, to claim the hidden treasures that have long been obscured by fear and denial. And in doing so, a profound transformation is set in motion, one that transcends belief, shatters limitation, and opens the gates to a life reimagined, reborn, and resonant with the boundless grandeur of the cosmos. This is the threshold we now stand upon, the dawn of a revelation that promises to forever reshape the contours of our existence. To grasp the transformative power of understanding the shadow self, we must first tune our consciousness to the subtle rhythms that govern all existence, recognizing that the shadow is not an aberration, but a vital thread woven into the grand tapestry of being. It is as if the universe itself whispers a secret through the interplay of light and darkness, inviting us to perceive beneath the veil of surface appearances. The shadow in this cosmic dance represents the unseen, the repressed, the fragments of self that have been disowned in the face of societal conditioning, fear, or survival mechanisms. Yet these very fragments pulse with raw energy and untapped potential, waiting to be acknowledged and harmonized with the luminous facets of our identity. Life, in its infinite complexity, is shaped by dualities, day and night, creation and destruction, pleasure and pain, and the shadow self dwells precisely in the intersection where such polarities converge. The first fundamental pillar to understand is that of wholeness, an ancient principle echoed in sacred traditions from the yin-yang symbol of Taoism to the alchemical marriage of opposites. To deny the shadow is to fracture the self, to live in the illusion of fragmented wholeness, where unseen forces dictate our behaviors from behind the curtain. When we dare to embrace the shadow, we step into the profound mystery of integration, a journey that dissolves division and reveals the luminous unity underlying apparent contradiction. This integration is not a simple act of will or intellectual acknowledgement, but a profound inner alchemy that transforms the lead of unresolved pain, shame, and fear into the gold of wisdom, compassion, and authentic power. It is a process of transmutation as ancient as stardust, echoing the cosmic cycles of death and rebirth, decay and regeneration. The shadow self, in its unhealed state, acts as a mirror reflecting the illusions we cling to, the stories we tell ourselves to maintain comfort, control, or identity. Yet, within those reflected images lies the portal to deeper truths, the recognition that suffering and limitation are not our core reality, but veils that obscure the radiant essence beneath. The second guiding idea is that of conscious encounter. When the shadow self is met not with judgment but with curiosity, we begin to dismantle the architecture of unconsciousness that keeps us entrapped. This meeting is akin to descending into an inner cave, a realm often feared yet rich with mysteries that sculpt the contours of our psyche. It requires an embodied presence, a willingness to witness without fleeing, and a compassionate gaze that sees beyond the surface distortions to the wounded soul beneath. Here, the veil between the known and the unknown thins, and the boundaries of the self expand to include what was once feared or rejected. This expansion is not merely psychological. It reverberates through the subtle bodies, realigning energy flows and awakening dormant capacities for insight and healing. In the cosmic theater of existence, the shadow self embodies the archetype of the trickster, the guardian of thresholds, and the herald of transformation. It challenges the ego's fixed narratives, provoking a crisis that ultimately births renewal. The shadow's resistance often masquerades as external obstacles, interpersonal conflicts, or inner turmoil. Yet it is, at its core, a call to awaken from the slumber of conditioned patterns. By embracing this entanglement, we uncover the illusion of separateness, the false narrative spun by the ego that isolates us from the interconnected web of life. The shadow dissolves this illusion by revealing that what we hunt in external realities, validation, power, safety, are reflections of inner deserts longing to be watered by conscious presence. The third pillar radiates from this revelation, the shadow as a reservoir of creative potential. Just as the night sky, though dark, is studded with the brilliance of countless stars, the shadow houses the raw material for profound creativity and spiritual genesis. When the shadow is integrated, these hidden energies transmute into sources of inspiration, boldness, and authentic self-expression. The dormant fires within the shadow can fuel the phoenix's rise from ashes, allowing us to reconstruct our lives with new purpose and clarity. This principle aligns with the universal law that growth often emerges from tension, and that transformation demands we embrace not just the light but the shadows that sculpt its form. This dynamic is reflected in the cyclical patterns embedded in nature, the ebb and flow of tides, the waxing and waning of the moon, the seasonal dance between life and dormancy. Our inner shadow journey synchronizes with these rhythms, reminding us of the eternal processes of letting go and renewal. Just as the soil must darken and rest before the bloom, the shadow's embrace cultivates fertile ground where seeds of authenticity and freedom can take root. Attempting to bypass this darkening only stunts growth, leaving us caught in repetitive loops of denial or projection. Underlying these pillars is a profound metaphysical truth, that the shadow self is never separate from the light, but exists as an inseparable aspect of the one. The cosmic fabric is interwoven with seeming opposites that reveal themselves, upon deep contemplation, as complementary aspects of a greater whole. The shadow asks us to relinquish our attachment to fixed identities and grip on control, inviting us to dance with uncertainty and paradox. It is here in this liminal space that true liberation arises, not as a distant ideal, but as a lived experience pulsating with the mystery of existence itself. Furthermore, the shadow reveals the illusory nature of the ego's dominion. The ego, in its quest for coherence and safety, erects walls of denial and repression, fragmenting the soul and perpetuating suffering. Yet beneath this constructed facade lies the essence, timeless, boundless, and radiant. The shadow is both the gatekeeper and the key to this essence. To understand and embrace it is to unlock the doorway to self-sovereignty, where we no longer require validation from external realities or the approval of conditioned beliefs. We awaken to our own inner cosmos, a universe alive with infinite possibility, unfettered by past wounds or future anxieties. In this way, the shadow self acts as the sacred teacher, guiding us through the labyrinth of illusion toward the vast expanses of truth. Its lessons are woven into the fabric of reality itself, echoing the cosmic principle that true knowledge arises not from avoidance but from intimate encounter. The shadow beckons us to step beyond dichotomies of good and evil, light and dark, wholeness and fragmentation, revealing these as the limited language of the egoic mind rather than absolute realities. To understand the shadow is to glimpse the boundless horizon where these distinctions dissolve into the luminous oneness of being. Ultimately, the guiding pillars of this journey, wholeness, conscious encounter, creative potential, and metaphysical unity, form a constellation illuminating the path toward transformation beyond belief. They reveal that the shadow self is not a problem to be solved, but a sacred dimension to be embraced, a portal through which the soul passes from identity to essence. As we surrender to this process, life itself begins to mirror the alchemical mystery unfolding within, a symphony of shadow and light, dance and stillness, loss and rediscovery. It is here, in the fertile tension between what has been and what can be, that our lives expand beyond the limits of previous understanding, opening into the unfolding grandeur of a self reborn and a reality reimagined. In the quiet theater of the soul, where shadows stretch long under the twilight of self-awareness, stories emerge like whispered secrets, ancient parables woven from the threads of cosmic truth. To journey deeper into the understanding of the shadow self is to enter a realm where metaphor becomes the language of the ineffable, and symbolism dances like firelight upon the cave walls of consciousness. It is here that the transformation beyond belief unfolds, a mystery told not in mere words, but in the turning of mythic keys that unlock the hidden chambers of the heart. Consider the tale of the blacksmith and the mirror, a story as old as the stars themselves. The blacksmith, working tirelessly in a forge nestled beneath the roots of a great mountain, shapes steel into weapons and tools, crafting with fire and hammer. One day, he discovers a strange, unpolished mirror buried beneath the ashes, a mirror that reflects not his outward form but the darkness that he has long hidden even from himself. At first he recoils, throwing the mirror into the furnace. Yet from the heat, a transformation begins. The reflection in the mirror melts and reshapes, revealing not only the shadow of his fears and failures, but also the dormant strength and wisdom that arises only through facing them. The blacksmith learns that the shadow is not an enemy to be destroyed, but the crucible through which light is forged. The dark mirror becomes a portal, a sacred artifact reminding him that the fire of transformation burns brightest when tempered by acceptance. Like the forge's flame, the shadow consumes, but it also refines, shaping the soul into a tempered blade, resilient, sharp, and luminous. Thus, the blacksmith's life transcends its former limitations, becoming a testament to the alchemy of shadow and light coalescing into new potential. His story embodies how embracing the shadow self reveals the hidden architecture of strength residing beneath apparent weakness, a revelation that transforms the very fabric of existence. Another luminous metaphor emerges in the tale of the night-blooming lotus, a flower that neither flees nor denies the darkness, but rather embraces it fully to reveal its exquisite beauty. In a still, quiet pond that lies beneath the cover of a moonless sky, the lotus unfolds its petals only when the world is cloaked in night. To the casual observer, darkness is absence or danger. To the lotus, it is the fertile ground of becoming. This nocturnal bloom mirrors the paradox of the shadow self. It thrives where light seems absent, and in its unfolding, it radiates a profound illumination that daylight alone cannot reveal. In this allegory, the shadow is the nocturnal invitation to bloom in the unlikeliest of times. It asks us to shed the illusion that illumination and growth belong solely to the daylight of conscious pride or certainty. Instead, it teaches that true awakening often emerges from the unseen chambers within, from the fertile soil of our concealed fears and buried sorrows. The night-blooming lotus does not fear its darkness, but harnesses it as an essential phase of its existence. So too does the shadow self become the indispensable nocturne in the symphony of the soul's evolution. Without it, the full spectrum of our being remains forever out of reach, like a flower that refuses to open, hiding its fragrance and color from the world. The cosmos itself offers a grand metaphor in the form of the celestial dance of Orion, the great hunter whose constellation traces a path across the night sky. Legend holds that Orion's belt was forged from stars born of chaos, a swirling tempest of cosmic dust and shadow. His figure is both a symbol of radiant power and the primordial darkness from which that power emerges. The hunter's story is not a tale of conquest over darkness, but a sacred interplay between light and shadow, a cosmic choreography where each movement depends on the presence of the other. Orion's strength is inseparable from the void that cradles his stars, illustrating how the shadow self is woven into the very fabric of cosmic order. Orion invites us to see ourselves not as beings divided between light and dark, good and bad, but as dynamic constellations whose brilliance is inseparable from the void. The shadow is the cosmic dance partner, the gravity well around which our shining stars revolve. In this eternal movement, transformation arises, not from an escape or denial of shadow, but from an embrace of it as a necessary and sacred dimension of being. Just as the hunter's belt guides ancient travelers through the night, understanding our shadow guides us through the labyrinth of existence, leading us toward horizons unseen and destinies unknown. In another whisper from the well of metaphor, the tale of the mirror lake surfaces, an ethereal body of water so still and clear that it reflects not only the landscape above but the inner depths of all who peer into it. Those who approach the lake seeking only their own reflection find it fractured and elusive, distorted by the ripples of denial and projection. But those who dare to gaze into the lake with courage and honesty witness a profound transformation, the merging of self and shadow into a singular image, whole and luminous. The lake symbolizes the reflective capacity necessary to understand the shadow, a quiet, undisturbed space within the psyche where the boundaries between self and other, light and dark, begin to dissolve. It is here that the alchemy of integration takes place, where resistance gives way to acceptance and fragmentation yields to wholeness. The mirror lake reminds us that transformation beyond belief is not a distant event, but a present reality that unfolds as we learn to hold our shadow with tenderness, recognizing it as a vital part of the infinite mosaic of our being. Finally, the myth of the phoenix rising from ashes offers a timeless emblem of the shadow's transformative power. The phoenix's fiery descent may be seen as the descent into the shadow, the dark night of the soul where all that is no longer needed is consumed by flame. But from this apparent destruction, the phoenix rises anew, reborn and radiant. This cycle of death and rebirth is not merely myth, but a cosmic law mirrored in the very structure of our inner journey. The shadow is the ashes from which the self can rise transcendent, more whole and vibrant than before, its life force rekindled by the sacred fire of self-knowledge. This myth echoes the profound truth that to understand the shadow self is to participate in an eternal cosmic rite, a dance of dissolution and emergence, where past limitations dissolve into the fertile ground for new reality. It beckons us to surrender to the process, trusting that within the darkest depths lie the seeds of resurrection, that in embracing our shadow, we become phoenixes burning brightly against the infinite night. Through these stories, the blacksmith's mirror, the night-blooming lotus, Orion's celestial dance, the mirror lake, and the phoenix's rise, we glimpse the sacred geometry of transformation. They are allegories not simply to be admired but to be lived, for in their symbolic cores lie the keys to a metamorphosis that transcends conventional understanding. Each narrative whispers the cosmic paradox. The shadow self is both the darkness we fear and the light we seek, the riddle that leads to revelation, the void that yields fullness. To understand this is to step into a new realm of consciousness where the self no longer resists its own depths but flows freely within them, crafting a life transformed beyond belief. to bring the grand tapestries of myth and mirror down from the lofty heights of cosmic abstraction into the quotidian landscape of our lives requires more than mere understanding. It calls for an alchemy of presence and intention. The shadow self, once revealed as that darkened undercurrent flowing beneath the surface of our conscious identity, begins to morph from a phantom menace into an intimate companion. This transformation, far from esoteric indulgence, whispers a practical invitation to live with more profound awareness, with a gentleness that dissolves the sharp edges of judgment and the quiet desperation of fragmentation. When you pause to notice the flicker of resistance within moments of discomfort, you are not encountering an enemy, but rather a messenger from the shadow realms, beckoning you to step deeper into the cavern of your own psyche, to listen and learn. In the realm of human relationships, this understanding becomes a subtle yet powerful revolution. The shadow is often the concealed theater of projections, those unseen dramas we unknowingly cast onto others, painting them with the hues of our hidden fears and desires. Recognizing the shadow's dance within makes it possible to reclaim these projections, to gently peel away the layers of assumption and blame that obscure authentic connection. Suddenly, the friction that once sparked endless conflict softens into a fertile ground for empathy and genuine dialogue. The shadow unmasks itself not only as the source of inner struggle, but also as the portal through which compassion flows. This shift can transform relationships from cycles of repetition and pain into sacred spaces where both light and shadow are honored, where vulnerability is not weakness but the language of profound trust. The playground of the ego, where control and certainty often reign supreme, becomes less tyrannical when the shadow is embraced. The impulse to avoid what is uncomfortable, to bury what is shameful, begins to loosen its grip as the shadow self is no longer an enemy to be vanquished but a teacher to be understood. In this unfolding, moments of failure, fear, and doubt cease to be markers of inadequacy and instead become signposts on the labyrinthine path of growth. This reframing invites a radical surrender, not to external circumstances, but to the internal rhythm of transformation. To live with the shadow is to live in the flow of becoming, to trust in the unfolding mystery rather than clutching at brittle narratives of perfection. From this place, resilience blossoms, not as a brittle armor but as a supple strength born of deep acceptance. On a practical level, this integration manifests as a daily practice of inner alchemy, where thoughts and emotions are not suppressed or ignored, but met with curiosity and care. The act of turning inward, of observing without immediate reaction, plants the seeds for profound change. This is the sacred silence where the shadow's languages, sometimes whispered guilt, sometimes roaring anger, or the subtle tremors of sadness, can be heard and translated into healing. It is here that the symbolic stories of the blacksmith mirror and the night-blooming lotus find their tangible expression. The mirror becomes not a surface for avoidance but a window into wholeness. The lotus not just a flower of myth but a living emblem of rising through murk to bloom in clarity. Such practices cultivate a deepening intimacy with the self and with life itself, a quiet revolution beneath the surface of ordinary days. Working with the shadow self also reconfigures our relationship with choice and power. When the shadow is unknown, decisions often emerge from fragmented desires or unconscious fears, leading to patterns that tether us to cycles of dissatisfaction. Yet as awareness deepens, so does the capacity to choose from a more integrated place, where light and dark are no longer opposing forces, but complementary energies dancing in balance. This balance does not imply stasis, but rather a dynamic equilibrium, where decisions ripple outward with the harmony of inner alignment. The sensation of being caught in invisible currents begins to give way to the experience of steering one's vessel through the cosmic ocean with greater clarity and wisdom. The transformation here is subtle yet seismic, Life no longer feels like a struggle against shadowy tides, but the deliberate weaving of a luminous tapestry. In the broader fabric of existence, understanding the shadow invites us to recognize the common threads we share with others in their own shadows. This recognition births a collective awakening, a shift where the isolation of fragmented selves dissolves into the communion of shared human struggle and triumph. In this communal field, the insights gleaned from the ancient myths and celestial dances become living currents that move through us, shaping not only individual destinies, but the evolving story of humanity itself. To embody the shadow is to stand both alone and together, a paradox that reflects the sacred geometry of existence. The personal transformation radiates outward, igniting subtle shifts in the cultural and spiritual landscapes, inviting a new consciousness that holds contradiction and complexity as sacred. Yet the invitation to live with the shadow is not a one-time initiation, but a continuous journey, an ever-unfolding spiral rather than a linear path. Each day offers fresh horizons to explore within the self, revealing new contours of darkness and light, sometimes in unexpected forms. This ongoing dance requires patience and grace. The shadow is both obscured and illuminated in the moments of everyday life, the glance that stirs jealousy, the unresolved anger beneath a polite smile, the ache of loneliness in a crowded room. By leaning into these moments with openness, the alchemy of transformation is activated. Life's once hidden architecture begins to reveal itself as a living mandala, where every fracture holds potential for creativity, and every shadow conceals a seed of illumination. Embracing the shadow in this way also invites a reconnection with intuition and the deeper currents of wisdom that flow beneath surface awareness. The mind, often accustomed to dissecting and categorizing, learns to soften its grasp and listen to the more subtle languages of the body and soul. This rebalancing is crucial, for the shadow often speaks through symbols, sensations, and emotions that resist logical naming. As one cultivates this heightened attunement, decision-making, creativity, and problem-solving ascend into a new dimension, one where inspiration emerges not from fragmented analysis, but from the harmonious interplay of conscious and unconscious knowing. Life, then, becomes a co-created symphony in which the shadow's depth enriches the melody rather than diminishing the light. In practical terms, working with the shadow self reframes the experience of failure, criticism, and societal judgment. Seen through the lens of shadow integration, these experiences are less about external condemnation and more about internal invitations to deepen self-awareness and self-compassion. The protective walls of defensiveness and denial give way to a spaciousness where difficult truths can be held without collapse. This new spaciousness allows for the birth of authenticity, a courage to show oneself fully, whether in personal life, creative endeavors, or social interaction. Thus, the shadow's once feared presence becomes the sacred forge upon which the strength of true character is shaped, allowing life to unfold with greater freedom and vitality. Ultimately, the practical integration of shadow understanding is an act of reclaiming sovereignty over the inner world. It is a profound shift from being a reactive victim of unseen forces to becoming an empowered participant in the co-creation of one's reality. The shadow's mysteries no longer lurk in the darkness as threats, but rest in the palms like living embers, warm, potent, and full of possibility. To walk this path is to live as a mystic of the ordinary, consciously weaving the threads of shadow and light into a tapestry that is uniquely your own, radiant in its complexity, and alive with the transcendent spark of transformation. This is the lived truth behind the mythic dance, a daily miracle where the shadow self ceases to be an obstacle and becomes the sovereign gateway to a life transformed beyond belief. As the cosmic tide of understanding gently recedes from the shores of your consciousness, it leaves behind treasures not of gold or jewels, but of something far more enduring, the profound awareness of your shadow self as an inseparable companion, a mirror reflecting the unseen chambers of your soul. When you stand at the threshold of this esoteric doorway, a transformation not merely of circumstance but of essence unfurls, quiet yet seismic in its reach. You begin to perceive life no longer as a fragmented sequence of trials and triumphs, but as a seamless tapestry woven from the threads of light and darkness, each thread vital, each contrast essential. The shadow, once mistaken for a specter to be feared or banished, emerges as the sacred axis upon which your personal cosmos turns. This axis, dark and luminous, anchors you into a fuller reality where the illusions of separation dissolve, and the wholeness of being beckons with open arms. In this radiant alignment, the shadow ceases to be the enemy and becomes the soul's secret ally, a guardian of truths too raw or too radiant to face alone. It urges you beyond the superficial layers of identity, beyond the masks worn to navigate the social world, into the depths where authenticity waits in patient silence. Here, your fears, your unspoken desires, your hidden scars, and dormant gifts gather like constellations across an inner night sky, inviting you to chart a new map of self-knowledge and self-compassion. The cosmos within you pulses with this intricate geometry, revealing how the dance between shadow and light is not a war but a sacred dialogue, an alchemy that transmutes pain into wisdom, chaos into creativity, resistance into flow. To embrace your shadow is to step into a twilight realm where paradox reigns, where vulnerability is strength, where brokenness is the seedbed of resilience, where the very darkness that once threatened to engulf you now becomes the fertile soil for rebirth. This rebirth is not a momentary surge but a continuing spiral, an ongoing process of peeling back layers, shedding illusions, and embracing the multitudes within. Such transformation transcends mere self-help or psychological insight. It is a cosmic initiation, an awakening to the hidden architecture of existence itself. The shadow's mysteries echo the ancient wisdom that all things rejected, all parts scorned or feared, hold the key to profound freedom. To walk this path is to engage in a sacred rite of passage, a pilgrimage into the unseen realms of the psyche, where the soul's deepest longings are freed from the prisons of denial. As you carry this understanding forward, the texture of your life softens and sharpens simultaneously. Relationships shift in tone and depth, resonating with newfound honesty and boundless acceptance. Life's challenges lose their oppressive weight, becoming catalysts for growth rather than triggers for pain. You learn to navigate the shifting landscapes of your inner and outer worlds with a quiet sovereignty, recognizing that the shadows outside you, whether in other people, society, or collective narratives, are reflections of your own inner terrain. This perspective births compassion not as an abstract ideal but as a lived reality. The interconnectedness of all things crystallizes, and you begin to perceive yourself not as a solitary island adrift in isolation, but as a vibrant node within an immense, unfolding web of consciousness. This is the ultimate alchemy of shadow integration, the dissolving of boundaries between self and other, light and dark, known and unknown. In this space, you become both the artist and the canvas, the question and the answer, the seeker and the found. Your life transforms beyond belief, not because external conditions magically change overnight, but because the lens through which you view existence shifts from one of fragmentation and fear to one of unity and insight. The shadow, once a source of shame or confusion, becomes the luminous thread that weaves coherence into the fabric of your being. It is the great paradox that the path to wholeness lies through the acceptance of all that you have tried so long to hide. May this journey into the depths of your shadow self-awaken in you a boundless courage, the courage to face your truth with tenderness, the courage to embrace your complexity without judgment, the courage to live as a radiant mystery in a world hungry for authenticity. In doing so, you not only transform your own life but become an emissary of light and shadow for others, a living testament to the power of integration and transcendence. Let this be your sacred charge, to move beyond belief into knowing, beyond fear into love, beyond fragmentation into the luminous dance of wholeness. The shadow is not your downfall, it is your doorway. Step through it, and behold a life transformed beyond the wildest reach of imagination. A life where the hidden architecture of your being finally reveals itself as a masterpiece of cosmic design.